Hi, my name is Squire, and I'm a former operations officer for the Central Intelligence Agency. I'm also a former member of the FBI's anti-war team, and currently I operate in the context of preventing genocide for the U.S. Marine Corps. This essay is going to reveal to you the nature of the Russian deep cover spy program in the United States of America. It is a case study. It is semi-personal. None of the facts have been made up. It is entitled Love and Espionage. Love wins. Interesting. Why, though, does love have to be so hard to actualize? I know I'm love. My whole being is love. Love and revolution, anyway. Interestingly, love has been hard to come by for me. While some had been receiving love their entire lives, and thus learned to live in a world where love is standard and part of the way things are, I had not been so lucky as to be a recipient of such love. Love for me has been a series of spy games. My dad would manipulate me into moments which I thought were normal, because children can't tell the difference between what is moral and what is strange. But when I look back at specific moments in my life, it is made clear to me that the behavior of my father had been completely abnormal and potentially very harmful. I think about the visits to the airport as a young child, where we would watch planes take off. Strange. Or the trip to New York City when I was younger, when Dad took me to the top of the World Trade Center, and then had a conversation in Hebrew with a guy named Dudi. Or I could think about my first memory, which had been of sitting in the car with Dad, while he sat in the driver's seat, and then we watched a building on fire. Or also my dad would let me pull the car into the driveway at the age of 5, sitting on his lap while I steered the wheel. I didn't know love, because it looks to me like my dad. I was just trying to get away with things through me, leveraging the fact that children don't know the difference between fatherly morality and social morality. And as long as the child feels as though everything is normal, everyone else will feel the same as well. In retrospect, my dad's behavior was classic KGB, which is interesting because my father does to this day have 3 passports: an American passport, an Israeli passport, and a German passport. The American passport actually says that he had been born in Germany. Well, my father had always told me that he had been born in Petah Tikva, Israel. My father had told me that he had worked in communications for the Israel Defense Force, that he had the rank of sergeant, that he had been an instructor. He told me how he liked the leadership and how he would patrol the border of Israel and Egypt with a tank, listening for radio signals and tracking the train tacks of others. It is very interesting how my dad reads websites such as Debka and Memory, both of which contain highly sensitive material related to counterterror and conversation and intelligence about the Arab world and their plans. Even when I had been 20 years old or more, when I had been studying in university as a political science major, he and I would have highly advanced conversations about geopolitics and the American military in conjunction with operations in the Arab world. When ISIL began to make an appearance, he and I would have conversations as to how to defeat them, and as to the implications on the world chessboard of potential military strikes. My father would also randomly do sketches of potential ways for the IDF and his proxies to catch Gazan rebels, leveraging signals and engineering and architecture. His work had been in architecture. When I had been born, he had been working as an architect for a military contract company in Yongsan in Seoul, South Korea. He worked on the commissary, and later, after I turned 22 and moved to Los Angeles, he accepted another position at an American architecture firm where he had been the lead project manager for the design and build of a $300 million hospital, also in Seoul. For the entire duration of my life thus far, my father had been playing squash at various clubs in Seoul and then in suburban Detroit, Michigan, a sport that is popular with many elite circles in DC, Paris, and London. My father loved me for the very first time when I was 26 years old, and I cried because I had not ever felt his love before. My mother is also an interesting subject. Raised in Detroit from a very young age, she claimed an interest in theater, men, and marijuana at the age of 14. She always assumed the role of victim. She went to college at Boston University for a year, and then went to Columbia University for a year before finishing up her studies later at the University of Texas at El Paso. She studied English and theater, and then moved to New York City and worked as a waitress. When I was 12 years old, she put me in the high school production of a Shakespearean play known as Macbeth. My role had been the son of Macduff. If you are familiar with the play, then you would know that the son of Macduff gets one scene. First whittling wood, and then 2 robbers enter the scene and kill the son. I had a blood packet and then a retractable plastic knife. My lines were said perfectly. And then as the 2 robbers appeared, they would act out an assault, and then, with my back to the audience, I would pop the blood packet and then turn around. For a strange reason, the audience laughed every time. She did other plays, which I did not participate in, such as The Crucible by Arthur Miller, The Brick, and The Road, and played against him. I would spend time in the wood shop and then backstage hanging out with the high school kids. No drinking or smoking, though. One of the students made it to Juilliard, and another student became accused of assaulting a woman in the bedroom. A third student was a genius and wrote a musical score to one of the plays. Himself, another student named Juliet, Mom always called a bitch, my mother, did not have a lover for 12 years, starting from the time I had been 6 years old. My father had divorced her when I carried the age of 2, under the pretense she had been too spiritual, interested in crystals and Native American spirituality. The manner in which the two of them met is highly unusual. My father had called the home of my mother, and my grandmother Ethel answered the phone. Jerry had been on the other end of the line to say that he was going to be in town and that he should visit the Goldstein family. My mother, who had been working in advertising at the time, had recently been fired, and they spent a week or two together. Then Jerry invited her to move to South Korea with her, and on a whim she accepted. During my childhood, I had always been involved in accelerated learning programs because I had always been smarter than everyone else, but doing this separated me from my classmates and made me distant socially. I had a lot of extra attention from the teachers at Stevenson and later Shannels Elementary School, but still, I had a hard time with critical thinking when they taught it to me at the age of 7, likely due to mental blocks put in place by my parents during my preschool years. At the age of 8, I had been placed in a program known as Talented and Gifted, and I excelled academically, while I always felt somewhat distant from the other students. I said my first cuss word at 9, after my house burned down while I was at the swimming pool with Mom. I sat on the toilet at my neighbor's house and kept saying fuck. My parents put me in orthodontia, giving me braces and also an expander where my mother would insert a key into the upper jaw and brace and then twist it, expanding the jaw by millimeters each night. The experience was quite painful. I often played in solitude, painting on my easel or building with Lincoln logs. I took fencing lessons at a young age and learned the difference between the swords. My favorite is the saber. As an only child, I would make friends with the neighbors, and I had a lot of fun playing with the Nerf guns and Super Soakers. I also took a liking to Legos and Connects, building highly advanced structures and getting into my dad's field of architecture through the construction of cool creations based on blueprints. I traveled to Israel 6 times during my childhood, starting at the age of 6, then 8, 10, 12, 18, and then 22. Interestingly, on many occasions of traveling to foreign countries, my father would take me to secure locations at the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv, or the U.S. Army base in Yongsan, a base which he had no trouble getting us into, even without credentials. In every context of my life, I have been met with hatred and apathy and very little love. I haven't even mentioned the emotional, mental, and psychological abuse my parents have victimized me with. The constant berating me for not having friends, the constant criticism of my ideas, the constant judging and disapproving of my every decision and choice. In the context of conversation with my father, every single statement I could make would be under scrutiny, as he would look through me in order to ascertain the truthfulness of my statements. It's as if I've been in court with my father the entire life, and he is the judge and the jury. Then a few months ago, I couldn't take the abuse anymore. The derision about not being able to hold a job, the look of shame in their eyes at my inability to hold a romantic relationship, the feeling of inadequacy as my father tells me to take off my clothes and get in the shower. So I told him, what do you want me to do, suck your dick? And he got in my face, right up to 6 inches away, and he told me to get out of the house. No, I didn't have enough money for the room for the month as is, knowing that doing so would put me on the street. So I punched him right in the jaw. I didn't hit him that hard, but a second later he called the police on me. I asked him if I could leave, and he said yes, and so I left, while he was on the phone with the local law enforcement of West Bloomfield, Michigan. The police pulled up to me, and as I was walking down Arrowhead towards Deerfoot Trail, and detained me with handcuffs, parking in front of the house. The police questioned me about the incident, and while I did not confess, they still placed me under arrest. At the station, the police took a mugshot and photographed my tattoos. They grabbed my fingerprints and handcuffs. Then I got placed in cell number 2. They attempted to interrogate me, and only in an interrogation room did they read me my Miranda rights. I requested an attorney instead. Interestingly, there is an officer in the West Bloomfield Police Department named Officer Kassab, formerly of Patrol Car 320, an officer who is protected by Kassab Arabo PLLC, a local law firm in West Bloomfield in 2014, I had been on the run from what I presumed to be the Mossad, but what likely had been the SVR. They had been threatening to cut my balls off. As I drove home to Jerry's house, I stopped a police squad car number 320. I asked to be detained for my protection for the night. Just a cell in a bed would be fine. But the officers would not comply. Someone forced my hand, and I ended up being taken to the local common ground under the recommendation of my father. This Officer Kassab has been the subject of inquiry to me, because I've noticed that his frames of control have been expanded to the Arab world while I had been in the jail cell. I instinctively started doing CT work and uncovered what looked to be some attempts by Officer Kassab to seed weapons transfers from, this is not about a command by the way, it's the opposite, from Minneapolis and Detroit, the two major Arab centers of the U.S., to Lebanon, Syria, and Saudi Arabia. I drank 4 high C's for the frame on the C4 group that I learned about at LAX, and for the frame on the facts. I have been airtight with French CT, the British CT, American CT, and Russian CT due to my previous trip to Paris, France, where I assisted with securing the Paris Marathon, after helping to secure the Los Angeles Marathon the month before. I spent half of my monthly income on bond, and then I bounced from Airbnb to Airbnb, before my mother gave me the birthday gift of 2 nights at the Red Roof Inn. Today I experienced what it's like to go to court in pretrial as the defendant. The charge was domestic violence for punching my father, a charge which really pisses me off, considering I started a 501c3 charity known as Girl Justice, which established power frames that prevented a lot of domestic violence, a lot of rape, and a lot of child marriage. Things get really interesting when on March 2nd, 2018, my father tells me out loud that he's a Russian agent. I had been sitting at his computer printing my Greyhound bus ticket to Los Angeles, and he kept on standing over my shoulder, watching my every move, eyeing my every keystroke. I asked him, "Are you some spy or something?" And he just all in confessed. "So you're a spy for Russia?" "Yeah, probably. The Germans and Israelis too, huh?" "Yeah." Then I remembered how my father attempted to indoctrinate me with KGB subliminal messaging. At the age of 10, my father handed me an index card. While I had been sitting in his office with him, on the index card was transliterated Russian, which I then sat with and memorized, based on his instruction to do so. Я знаю, что так это не может продолжаться, и надеюсь, что вы все понимаете, что это скоро кончится, я думаю, etc. It is obvious that this relationship has nothing to do with love, not even from mother with love. It is clear that I have been raised by deep-cover Russian spies, who are eager to not just manipulate, but also employ subterfuge, deception, obfuscation, physical compliance, and misdirection. Their goal has been nothing more than the total erosion of the United States of America's culture, standards, values, and morals, including and especially as it pertains to the frames of law and the frames of local, state, and federal court. It's hard to defeat a Russian spy as strategic as Jerry, and just as hard to convict someone with a total frame on the jury, as well as jurisprudence, as well as Jewry, as well as Judaism. So as I write this, I'm awaiting a probation hearing on the 23rd of May. I confessed to the punch of Jerry in front of the judge at pretrial today in order to avoid jail time and get probation instead. I am open to doing community service. It is obvious that I'm not just some average person. I know about espionage, but presumably I could just be studying it for fun. There are a lot of people who want to be spies. When you realize that your father is a spy, it's hard not to become one yourself. Thank goodness I'm American. As American as apple pie, as barbecues on the 4th of July, as Fick hits the Grand Slam sky high, I believe in my country. I believe in its values, in its teachings. I only wish that I had known its love. Thank you for watching Science Squire. I hope you understand the Russian Deep Spy program is very, very similar for most Americans in deep cover, under the context of infiltration of the Russian deep cover spy parents. I was one of those Americans in deep cover. Codename Ryan. Figure it out.